All right. How many of you, there's going to be a little bit of participation this morning, okay? So just a forewarning, going to need you guys to use your, maybe not your inside voices, outside voices are okay today, okay? All right. How many of you can tell me who this guy is? Can you guys, anybody remember? Dr. Dolittle. Hey, you got it right on the first try. Dr. Dolittle. You guys remember the Animal Whisperer, and I think they remade the movie, right? Is actually pretty. I think there's a new one. Yeah, there's another, like a new, yes, where they like buy a. It's actually a really, really sweet story. All right, how many of you know who this guy is? Anybody? Oh, Lindbergh? Close? No, actually, this is another Doolittle. This is James Doolittle. James Doolittle, and if anyone is in aviation, you may know the man. General James Doolittle is probably best known for leading the air raid in World War II on Tokyo, right, in 1942, but perhaps his greatest contribution to the world happened on the home front years earlier, September of 1929. He was born in Alameda, California in 1896, left college early to enlist as a flying cadet and earned a commission as a second lieutenant in the Signal Officers Corps of the U.S. Army. He served as an instructor through World War I, was well decorated. He decided he was going to go to college, so he got an educational leave or assignment from the military, went to MIT. He somehow managed to complete his master's degree sooner than he thought he was going to. He had a year left, so said, why not? I'll just stick around and do a doctorate. So went on to do a Doctor of Science in Aeronautics. And he's maybe starting to get known as one of the preeminent pilots of his time. He's training all these pilots and realizing that if they want to have success in aviation, that some improvements need to be made. Realizing that unless pilots are able to fly blind, right? Have you ever heard the term flying blind, right? Unless pilots are able to fly without being able to see visual cues outside of their aircraft, that they're not going to have a whole lot of success. So being able to fly at night in bad weather, and so he takes some of the rudimentary instrumentation in the aircraft. They really had some basic stuff to like something to give you your altitude and your airspeed, but that's really about it. And he starts to say, okay, I am going to set out to fly blind. I'm going to take off, fly, and land without seeing anything outside of the aircraft. So he starts giving his life to improving the aircraft, putting all these different technologies, so things we would know as a heading indicator or some like a horizon indicator, an artificial horizon, an altitude, and an barometric altimeter, all these things that he adds into the aircraft, and he's like bolting them onto the plane so that he can figure out how to get the plane to fly from inside the cockpit without all the visual cues around him. And it culminates in him taking this test flight on September 24th. And he puts this together, and it's really only a 15-minute flight. But he puts a canopy, like a cover over top of his cockpit. Now, his plane is one of those two-cockpit kind of people, or two-person. So there's somebody sitting in front of him that can take the controls if things go really south. But that pilot held his hands over his head the entire flight, which I don't know, I mean, holding your hands over your head for 15 minutes sounds like kind of rough, but not as rough as knowing the guy behind you flying the plane can't see anything, right? But he's flying the plane blind. He has a cover over him. All he can see is their instrumentation in front of him. He can't see any of the visual cues outside of the plane. And maybe sometimes life feels a little bit like that. Right? Maybe sometimes life feels a little bit stormy, a little bit overwhelming, a little hard to figure out. Maybe sometimes there's some disorienting moments or experiences in our lives where the visual cues are all kind of gone, where you're not really sure exactly which way's up, which way's forward. Maybe some things like the complexities of life, the anxieties of life, the traumas of life, all kind of put this swirl where sometimes we just feel a little lost. And maybe some wisdom would help. Maybe wisdom is a little bit like those instruments inside of the aircraft. And sometimes I think we think of wisdom in this way, of this kind of internal knowledge that we've gained and kind of accrued along the way, and maybe calibrated enough by spending time reading the Bible or coming to church or attending Sunday school, that maybe we've calibrated these instruments enough so that we can find our way. But I want to suggest this morning that that's not all there is when it comes to wisdom. Wisdom's not just figuring out the rules of life, how to get it right, how the do's and don'ts of life. Proverbs are not rules, they're not guarantees. They're not ifs and thens, although they sound a lot like them. It's not just if you do this, then that will happen. The theologian Gerhard von Rad describes wisdom as competence with regard to the realities of life. Figuring out how to really get good at life. These 3 books of wisdom in the Bible, Job, Ecclesiastes, and Proverbs, they're known as the wisdom literature. And we see these questions start to stand out. What kind of world are we living in? How do we live well in this world? How do you get good at life? And I want to suggest to us and nudge to us this morning to consider that wisdom is more than just fortune cookies or bite-sized proverbs, or even as Josh described at opening this series, this invisible creative force in the universe that, just like gravity, you can't really see it, but has significant implications for living life, described in Hebrew as chokmah, but translated in English as wisdom. These are all elements of wisdom, but I think that there's more. So today, let's look to 1 Kings to teach us more about wisdom. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 3. You're welcome to turn there in your Bible or on your app, or it's up here on the screen. Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and married his daughter. He brought her to the city of David until he finished building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people, however, were still sacrificing at high places because a temple had not yet been built for the name of the Lord. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the instructions given to him by his father David, except that he offered sacrifices and burned incense on the high places. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place, and Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this and not for long life or wealth for yourself," you haven't wished for more wishes, "nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and commands as David your father did, I will give you a long life." Then Solomon awoke, and he realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, sat before the ark of the Lord's covenant, and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then he gave a feast for all of his court. Okay, there's a couple things that stand out to me in this passage, and I want to kind of touch on a couple of those this morning. The first thing that stands out to me is that faith is a rich inheritance. See, Solomon is somewhere around, the scholars believe, like 20 years old, and he's found himself to be king. He's inherited the kingdom of Israel from his father David. Chapter 1 of 2 of 1 Kings give an account of David passing his kingdom to Solomon and saying things like, "Stay faithful to God, and finish my temple that I've been dreaming about, a place for God to inhabit the praises of his people." And he also says some things like, "Hey, plot a murder and kill all of my political enemies." So there's a little bit of like mixed messaging there, but I think that maybe that provides some hope for us. Maybe if our spiritual lineage is a bit of a mixed bag. Faith is a rich inheritance. There's nothing here that indicates that this is the first time that Solomon has ever heard the voice of God. It does not seem like this is a strange encounter to him. It seems like there actually may be a little bit of a familiarity when the voice of the Lord comes to Solomon. And I want to go back here to, I can go back one. So yeah, he comes to him and he basically, like, the Lord talks to Solomon, and then Solomon comes back to him and says, "Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David." He says, "I'm only a little child. I need some help here. Your servant is among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern over your people." He's having a conversation with the Lord, and he's not scared out of his mind, right? He's not running to hide from the Lord. This does not seem like it's a strange thing to him. And I want to encourage us today that faith is a rich inheritance. And I don't know what that looks like for you. I don't know if you grew up in a family of faith or not. If you grew up in a home where the name of Jesus was familiar and honored, or if it was maybe used as a curse word or not at all. But today I want to challenge us that we are standing at the intersection of legacy and heritage. Of heritage and legacy. We're standing right in the middle of them, and my question to you today is, what are you passing on? What are you passing on to your kids? What are you passing on to your family? What are you passing on to the kids in our kids ministry? Listen, if you're not a parent, you still are leaving a legacy, right? There are still people that are watching and learning from you and learning, hey, is this Jesus thing really real? Does faith actually matter in 2024 and moving forward? Does this matter for me, or is this kind of all the stuff of old, right? What we don't see Solomon do here is toss it all out and like, yeah, listen, God, you were good for my father David, but, there's all these, like Pharaoh, he's got some gods that maybe I'll try out. And, all these other people, the neighbors, they've got some gods. Now we do see, unfortunately, that Solomon does not completely stay true. He starts to kind of mix in some of the gods and some of the faiths and streams of faith around him. And unfortunately, that's kind of to his demise. What it actually indicates is that Solomon is not the Messiah, right? There's all these prophecies that the Messiah will come from David's line, and yet we find king after king after king. That's actually the whole book of 1st and 2nd Kings kind of tells the story that there's all these kings that are not the Messiah. They're not Jesus, right? And it points in the direction of needing hope beyond just human help. But I want to encourage us today that faith is a rich inheritance. Psalm 68 says that he puts the lonely in families. So don't think that just because you don't have children that you're not impacting the rising generations. There's a lot to be said about how we're modeling, how we're living, how we're investing in our kids ministry, in our youth ministry, and in our families, in our homes, right? There's a lot to be said for that. And so I hope that as we look towards this year ahead, right, as we kind of close out 2024 and we look towards 2025, as we look towards some new little ones coming into our gathering, as we look at the kids that are growing in our community, we're excited about it, and I hope that we're paying attention to what we're passing on. And so faith is a rich inheritance. The other thing that I want to mention is that maybe we should pay attention to our dreams. We see here that this is God coming to Solomon in the middle of the night, and we see that he recognizes that it's a dream. At the end of it, he recognizes, oh, that was a dream, right? But it says that God came to him in a dream, and this is not the first or the last time in scriptures that God visits someone in their dreams. Jacob was dreaming about a stairway to heaven. His son Joseph dreams about his brothers bowing down to him. Didn't do a great job of keeping that to himself and gets him in a little bit of trouble, but it all kind of turns out. Gideon dreams about loaves of barley. Abraham dreams about the countless stars and the descendants that are coming after him. Joseph is visited in a dream that tells him to flee to Egypt with Mary and the baby Jesus. Samuel the prophet is visited in his slumber by the Lord while he's learning under the priest Eli. God clearly visits his people during their times of rest. And I want to encourage us today that paying attention to our dreams matters. And this may be like dreams as in aspirations, but I think there's something very specific for us about paying attention to the way the Lord visits us when we're at rest, when we're not too busy to hear him, right? Maybe that's part of it, is that we're not just, Lisa and I were just talking about, like, we're like busy people, right? And I think we're probably not the only ones in the room that feel like maybe our schedule is kind of running our lives. Maybe we're just a little too busy sometimes to actually hear the voice of God. But maybe when we're sleeping in our slumber, when we're resting, God has some things he wants to say to us. So I want to encourage you today, maybe pay attention to those. Maybe a journal of some things. Now, if you're the kind of person that just has like crazy, like Stephen King kind of nightmares, listen, those are maybe something to pay attention to, but when it's something that seems maybe almost to interrupt that, or maybe a dream in a different direction, something that has a little bit of life to it, or has some importance, write that down. And then maybe work that out with your small group, with another person who's following Jesus that could kind of pray into that and look into that with you. Now, I'm not saying that we're just chasing our dreams and we're just following every little, sometimes it's the pizza that you ate the night before, or the tacos, or the, whatever it is. Sometimes that's your dreams, right? But sometimes God has things he wants to say, and paying attention to when he shows up matters. So pay attention to your dreams. Acts puts it like this, and he's actually quoting the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. Like, this is a promise from the Lord that our dreams matter. And so pay attention to them, and let's maybe explore sharing those together and lining those up with the word, lining those up with the wisdom of God's people. Maybe God wants to give us some wisdom through our dreams. All right, the next thing here is that leaders make decisions. We see Solomon here is the leader. He's suddenly found himself to be king. The kingdom of Israel has been dropped in his lap. He's been around the royal household his entire life, but he's never been king. Like, this is the first time he's got to make like king kind of decisions, where everything, like whatever he says goes. And he knows that he's going to have to make decisions. Do you know, just a guess, how many decisions do you think the average person, the average human makes in a day? Hundreds? Thousands? Any guesses? 64 decisions. You're very close. It's actually 35,000, right? 35,000 decisions from like the time that you wake up, or even if you're going to wake up, like, am I going to get out of bed, or am I going to hit the snooze button, right? Am I going to make the bed? Am I not going to make the bed? Like, your decisions start like as soon as you're awake. And those decision-making processes follow you all throughout the day. And so what I thought might be a fun exercise for us today is to make some decisions together. How's that sound? Yeah? All right. You guys are going to be the judges, okay? So this is when we're going to use our outside voices, okay? So we're going to make some decisions. I've got some scissors here. I'm going to be very careful, and I'm not going to run with them. All right. All right. Let's do this.
Those are for like cutting ribbons at ceremonies.
These they're whatever. I couldn't read what the description of them was on Amazon because it wasn't in a language that's familiar to me. But here we go. All right, we're gonna make some decisions. You guys, I'm gonna read through them. You're gonna make some noise, okay? All right. First one, we're gonna start nice and easy. Hey, listen, we're also.
I'll be Vanna. You hold the mic.
All right. We're gonna make some decisions, and we're all gonna be friends after this, okay? Right? We're gonna be kind to each other. All right. The first one, Coke or Pepsi. All right. If you're Team Coke, make some noise. If you're Team Pepsi, make some noise. Oh, I think we're Coke. All right, we'll keep Coke. All right, next one. Apple, Team Apple or Team Android? Team Apple. Ah, Team Android. Whoa, I think we're Android on that one. Shame on you. No, we're all friends. All right, diet or exercise? Ah, it's a both and. Diet? Okay, exercise. Hey, all right, we're Team Exercise. Weights or cardio? All right, Team Weights? Team Cardio? Oh, weights on that one for sure. Goodness. All right, pass the ball or run the ball? Pass the ball. Run the ball. We'll say pass because... All right, life's mysteries here. Toilet paper over, toilet paper under. A big source of contention. Toilet paper over. Toilet paper under. We're going over on that for sure. Okay, all right. This is going to be very telling of your personality, okay? Sock, sock, shoe, shoe. Sock, shoe, sock, shoe. All right. Sock, sock, shoe, shoe. Sock, shoe, sock, shoe. Hey, all right, we're unanimous. Okay, now they start to have some more implications about life, okay? Go to college or start a career? Go to college. Start a career. Okay. I think we're both on that one, but I think it sounded like career. We can take both. All right, make more money or do what you love. Make more money. Do what you love. All right, I don't know what your plans are this year, but stay home for the holidays or travel for the holidays. Stay home for the holidays. Travel for the holidays. Oh, stay home sounds like the winner for sure. Invest in the stock market or invest in real estate. Stock market. Yay! Real estate. Oh, real estate. All right. You guys like some houses. Save your money or travel and see the world. Save your money. Travel and see the world. Oh, I think the savings won that one. Okay, some more implications on life. Stay single or get married. Stay single. Get married. Yeah. All right, I think we're getting married. Stay in a relationship or end a relationship. Ooh, stay in the relationship. End the relationship. We're not sure which way to go here. All right, well, we can take them both. All right, have kids. Don't have kids. Have kids? Don't have kids. All the parents in the room. All right, this is personal for me. Buy a new home or add on to an existing home. Buy a new home. Do an addition. Oh, I think we're adding on here. All right.
I see what you're going through, and I think buy a new one.
Go to church or spend time with family. Go to church. Spend time with family. Oh, you guys really like going to church. Oh, here's a discipleship or evangelism. Discipleship. Evangelism. Oh, wow. All right. Holy Spirit ministry or reading the Bible. Oh, Holy Spirit ministry. Reading the Bible. Ooh, which one was that? I think that's another both. All right, we're going to not do that one. You can show them to them. but we're not gonna. All right, wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. Oh, we can drop that one. We can drop that. We can show that one, but we can drop that one. Harris Trump. We can drop that one. Buy a church building or keep leasing a space. We're not gonna make that decision today. Okay, and then finally, take the red pill or take the blue pill. Survey says red pill, blue pill. Red pill it is. All right. Thank you, Chris. Do you guys know there's a thing called decision fatigue? Where somewhere in the day, when you start to get into those 35,000 decisions, you just get tired of making decisions. And this is average human beings, like normal people. Can you imagine being the president? Could you imagine being the governor? Could you imagine being the king? Right, Solomon has found himself as the king, and he realizes that he has to make some decisions. He realizes that he needs some help. He realizes that this is a little bit more difficult than he's ever seen before. And we see here, if we continue in the story, we see Solomon making his first recorded decisions. Probably not the first decisions he's ever made, but he's got to make the decision here. Okay, now 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. One of them said, "Pardon me, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I had a baby while she was there with me. The 3rd day after my child was born, this woman also had a baby. We were alone. There was no one in the house but the 2 of us. During the night, this woman's son died because she lay on him. So she got up in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while I, your servant, was asleep. She put him by her breast and put her dead son by my breast. The next morning, I got up to nurse my son, and he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning light, I saw that this wasn't the son I had born." The other woman said, "No, the living one is my son, the dead one is yours." But the first one insisted, "No, the dead one is yours and the living one is mine." So they argued before the king. Okay, so they're having a fight right in front of King Solomon, right? The story continues. The king said, "This one says my son is alive and your son is dead. Well, that one says, no, your son is dead and mine is alive." He's trying to figure it out here. He's trying to figure out what's happening and sort through it. Then the king said, "Bring me a sword." And I think it might have been a little bit bigger than these scissors, but who knows. So they brought a sword for the king. Then he gave an order, "Cut the living child in 2 and give half to one and half to the other." The woman whose son was alive was deeply moved out of love for her son and said to the king, "Please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him." But the other one said, "Neither you nor I shall have him. Cut him in 2. Then the king gave his ruling, "Give the living baby to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother." When all Israel heard the verdict the king had given, they held the king in awe because they saw that he had wisdom from God to administer justice. He's making decisions. He's making decisions that are previously were way above his pay grade, right? Like the decisions of life and death. Decisions of whose family belongs to who. Sometimes the decisions are a little bit past us. Sometimes the decisions are complicated and complex to the point that there's not actually an obvious right decision. You know, Charles Spurgeon puts it like this. He says, discernment is not the ability to tell the difference between right and wrong, right? We kind of figured that out. Adam and Eve kind of helped us out with that, right and wrong. Rather, it's telling the difference between right and almost right. Don't we find ourselves with those kind of decisions sometimes? Where there's not actually an obvious wrong choice? Where we have to make a decision, but there's not a whole lot to go on. There's not visual cues that you can see, oh, I should go that way instead of this way. Sometimes discernment is making telling the difference between right and almost right. And I want to encourage us today that sometimes in making those decisions, we're humans. We don't always get them right. There's not a whole lot of documentation or recording of bad calls that Solomon made, but I'm sure he made some, right? He was human. But he was also gifted with wisdom from God. And so wisdom, decision-making, is the kind of thing that we can grow in. In Luke, we're told that Jesus himself grew in wisdom and stature, with favor with God and with man, right? This is something that, if God himself in human form can grow in wisdom, in good decision making, then maybe you and I can too. How do we do that? How do we grow in wisdom? I want to push us towards this. If you need wisdom, ask for it. If you need wisdom, ask for it and then listen. See, wisdom is not just accumulating an arsenal of knowledge and providing like a catalog or like a Rolodex that you can pull. Like maybe it's not accumulating a play calling sheet that you can make your decisions from in real time. You know, and I know that I'm pushing at some of our like North American Christianity where we want to like lace up our bootstraps. We want to like get it all right. We want to kind of like, listen, I think God is a little less interested in making you like the best version of yourself. And I think he's a little bit more interested in making you the kind of person that can hear his voice. The kind of person that is like responsive to the things that he's trying to say to you and to me. What I'm not saying is that God doesn't want you to be successful, but I think maybe our measure of success, it looks a little bit different than his sometimes. I'm pushing us towards an actual dependence on the Spirit of God to lead us, like in the moment, day in and day out, to make decisions that align with his kingdom, with his values, with his leading. A conscious decision to reorder our lives in order to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and do the things he did. To grow in wisdom and stature and favor with God and with man. We see here that Solomon asked for it, right? Of all the things he could have asked for, right? And this is a little different than the genie popping out of a bottle, right? But he gets to ask for whatever he wants. Like God comes to him, he doesn't give him any restrictions, doesn't say, hey, ask for one of the, it's not multiple choice, it's open-ended, fill in the blank. Ask for whatever you want. And the one thing he asks for is wisdom. Now, the translation sometimes is that when he asks for a discerning heart, is that he actually asks for, scholars would believe that he actually asks for a listening heart. For a heart that is able to hear and know the voice of God. He's asking to be led. He's not asking for, put in me the barometer or the needle to know yes, no, yes, no. He's saying, like, God, would you lead me? Would you in the moment give me the wisdom that I need? And the response here from God is that he gives him in return, he gives him wisdom. And so this calls into question a little bit, I think, our understanding of what wisdom actually is. Because we like to think of wisdom as that internal knowledge of like left, right, forward, to know which way to go, yes or no. And I think wisdom a little bit more is like knowing and hearing and being responsive to the voice of God. All right, another airplane. Here we go. So about a month ago, this year in Bakersfield, California, there is air traffic control. They received a distress signal from this King Air kind of small aircraft. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They're headed from Henderson, Nevada to Monterey, California. The pilot suffers a medical emergency, and the passenger has now found himself with a field promotion to pilot. What do you do if you're not a pilot? You're not a pilot. You don't have a pilot's license. You might not even have like a pilot pen, right? What do you do? The aircraft is fully operational. All the altimeters, the gyroscopes, all the things that, thanks to General Doolittle, are on board on the airplane, those are working. But what do you do? He radios for help, right? And I'm sure he didn't know all the right verbiage and all the like protocols of like how to radio to air traffic control. I'm sure it was a little bit more of like a press a button and like yell for help. Like SOS, I need some help. Things are going bad really quickly. And he calls for help. Thankfully, the team of ground control had some experienced pilots that like kind of practice for this thing, where they can coach somebody how to turn the direction of the airplane, how to locate the nearest airfield, and how to land safely, which is not an easy thing to do. The statistically not a successful operation. But they were able to, and we don't know the name of the pilot or the passenger now pilot. We don't know his name, but he was able to successfully land the plane at Meadows Field just outside of Bakersfield. And thankfully, it was because he heard the voice of someone outside of the aircraft. All the tools, all the technology is working, but it didn't really help him out. Right? Sometimes we get ourselves in situations, sometimes we find ourselves in moments where we have to make decisions, and all the instrumentation, all the preparation, all the tools, all the knowledge that we've accumulated along the way isn't enough to help us. Sometimes we have to actually ask for help. C.S. Lewis says it like this. It wouldn't be a Vineyard Church sermon without C.S. Lewis, right? Holy places are dark places. It's life and strength, not knowledge and words, that we get in them. Holy wisdom is not clear and thin like water, but it's thick and dark like blood. Sometimes we need God in those dark, hard places to actually speak to us. It's not knowledge and not just words. It's life, it's strength. It's the kind of thing that comes and wells up within us to lead us in the way that we're supposed to go. Isaiah puts it like this. He says, to the left and to the right. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. And that's my prayer for us. That's my prayer for us as a church, as a people. That's my prayer for all of our small groups. Small groups, by the way, are a fantastic lab to work this kind of stuff out. To say, hey, I had this dream. I kind of have this situation that I'm working through in life. I don't know which way to go. I feel like God might be saying X, Y, or Z, but can you help me? Can we discern this together? Can we unpack that and really pray and spend some time listening for God together? Here's the thing. Here's the promise, is that James tells us that we can ask for wisdom. James chapter 1 says this, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. The Message puts it like this, if you don't know what you're doing, pray to the Father. He loves to help. You'll get his help and won't be condescended to when you ask for it. He's not going to tell you, hey, how do you not already know how to do this? Right? Like, do you find yourself in some moments sometimes where you need God to actually speak? Where you need God to actually tell you to the left, to the right, this is the way, walk in it. I know for myself, like, listen, this parenting journey, right? Goodness, knowing when to push and when to pull, like, I'm not great at it. I'm trying. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's not easy. Sometimes I need, like, the Lord to actually say, like, hey, this is the way. Walk in it. This is how you're going to leave the legacy of faith that you are wanting to leave. This is the way that you're going to make an impact to your family, to your neighbors, to the people around you. This is the way. Walk in it. Here's the thing. I feel like I've only actually heard the voice of God, like, audibly twice in my life, okay? So what I'm not saying is that you're always just going to hear God say, like, hey, take the red pill or the blue pill, or like, hey, drink the Coke and not the Pepsi, right? Like, that's not, like, what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that, like, as you make those decisions, you will learn kind of how to pay attention to the nudge of the Holy Spirit. Sometimes it's like an intersecting thought. Sometimes it's a feeling. Sometimes it's just a word, like you just know it, right? I have heard the voice of God, and I pray that you, each person in this room, would know and recognize and follow after God, right? And both times I was making some decisions about life and faith and those kinds of things. One time, so this is 2015. I'm 1 month into a job, working at a Vineyard Church in the Philadelphia area as a youth pastor, and I had come to that job from the auto industry, right? I'd done a bunch of ministry and youth ministry and camps, and then I found myself selling cars for a couple years, right? It was kind of one of those life turns that you're like, how did I get here? And then I got this call, started on staff of this church. In the process, while I was also trying to get hired at this church, I was also in the process with a fire department in Virginia Beach to go work for them. And I made it as like a finalist with them, but I hadn't made the list to go to the fire academy. So I've took that as the Lord's leading, right? Of like, okay, this door closed, this one open. This is the way I should walk in it, right? I'm 1 month into the job, and literally in like 48 hours, I get a phone call from the general manager at the Ford store that I used to work at in the Baltimore area. And he says, hey, listen, I know you left to go do like, ministry stuff. I'm a church guy. I'm supportive of it, but we miss having you on our team. I know the difference between what you were making and what you could make, so I will guarantee you 6 figures to come back to work for me. I'll just put it in your check and we'll figure it out. It's like, oh, okay, I'm working on a youth pastor salary here. That doesn't sound too bad. All right, but I got to think and pray about this. Okay, so I move on. Like 24 hours later, I get a phone call. Hey, this is the recruiting office for the Virginia Beach Fire Department. We've had someone back out of the fire academy. You were next on the list. So if you can report on Monday for your uniform sizing, you're the next one to get hired. I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like I remember driving down the highway and I'm like racking my brain. I'm like, okay, now there's money, there's these jobs, like, and I'm like, God, what do I do? Like, what? Just tell me what to do. What do I do? And I hear this audible voice. I already told you. I'm like, all right, that's it. So I send, messages back in both ways of like, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. I believe I'm doing what I'm supposed to do right now, so I'm going to have to decline. That was one of the 2 moments in my life where I feel like God has actually spoken to me. And it wasn't this long, speech. It was just, I already told you. This is the way, walk in it. And that is my prayer, that we would together develop the reflex, the muscle to be able to hear God and know, oh, that was actually God speaking. I should pay attention to this. This is the way I should walk in it. All right, we've talked about a couple airplanes today. Do you know that the word pilot actually comes from the Greek word paidon, and the translation is oar. It's a little weird to have an oar in the sky, right? Okay, the oar is actually referencing and speaking to like a ship captain or a harbor pilot. Back in the day, before there was all the technology that could tell you GPS locations of like rocks and icebergs and getting into the coves, like in the ship trade industry, there is a job called a harbor pilot. And it was somebody that was familiar with the coasts, familiar with all the reefs and the shipwrecks underneath the water from people that were unsuccessful in coming into the harbor, someone who knew the area. And the ship captain could signal from out at sea, could signal to the harbor pilot in the cove with a lantern or whatever the signal was, that they needed a harbor pilot to come tell them, because this is a ship captain who's going all up and down the coast, all across the seas. They don't exactly know how to get into this one specific cove, right? And so they would send a signal or a message, and the harbor pilot would hop in his little like rowboat or whatever, and would come out to the ship and come on board. And the captain's still at the helm, he's still at the wheel, still making the calls, but the harbor pilot would come to him and tell him, go this way, not that way. Hey, watch over here. There's the last guy that tried to come in here and didn't call for help. Yeah, he's sunk there, right? There's a rock over there. There's an iceberg over there. He would navigate the ship captain into safety, into the port, so that they could go about and do their thing, right? And I think as we talk about being led, as we talk about piloting, as we talk about wisdom, that maybe God actually wants to come on board with us and be with us in the moment and tell us to the left, to the right, this is the way, walk in it. Don't go over here, go this way, right? And that is my prayer. That is my prayer. That is my encouragement to us as we push into wisdom. I'm not saying that it's not Proverbs. I'm not saying that it's not accumulated wisdom. But what I'm saying is that there is a gap. There's a gap between what we can put into our brains, the lives that we can live and learn from, the lives of other people that have been lived and we can learn from. There's still a gap. And it's not always going to give us the ability to make the decision in the moment that's going to have the right outcome. And sometimes we need some help, and I believe that that help actually comes from God. So this is the primary goal for us. This is a primary goal for me as a parent, as a ministry leader, as someone trying to encourage us as a church, to hear and know and follow after the voice of God. And my question to you today is, do you know the voice of God? Have you asked him for direction, for leading, for wisdom? Are there things in your life maybe that are off the table that he can't ask you about, that he can't talk to you about, that he can't give you direction in? Have you asked, and are you listening? Proverbs puts it like this. We couldn't finish a whole series on wisdom without at least looking at the first chapter of Proverbs. Proverbs describes wisdom like this. Wisdom shouts in the streets. She cries out in the public square. She calls to the crowds along the main street, to those gathered in front of the city gate. Come and listen to my counsel. I'll share my heart with you and make you wise. There's some commentary, there's some more verses in between there that talk about how long are you going to be fools? How long will foolish people be foolish? How long will mockers mock? How long will you be stuck in your own way? How long will you look at just what's right in front of you instead of looking to me? Come and listen to my counsel. I'll share my heart with you and make you wise. Would it be that the wisdom of God would actually come into our lives and teach us and guide us and mold us into the people that he's designed us to be?